in-depth analysis from seasoned professionals. Start your day the right way on 99.3 Nigeria Info. Nigeria Info.
99.3 Nigeria Info. Good morning, Lagos. Once again, welcome back from our sports studios. Let's get on with the program right now. 7:37 is the time from our studios. Welcome to From the Front Pages, where we look at headlines making the front pages. This morning, we have the national dailies here these days. Here, the Vanguard, Daily Independent, The Nation, Daily Sun, Daily Trust, the Guardian newspaper, as well as the Blueprint newspaper. I am Sheriff Quadry. Rotimi Sankore joins us on the program this morning. Rotimi, good morning to you.
Morning.
It's good to have you here. Let's start with our partner on the program this morning, the Guardian newspaper. Government extends border closure to 2020. Front page of the Guardian newspaper. Banner headline from this day newspaper: businesses express support for FG's extension of border closure to January 2020. Rider, reopening depends on attainment of government objectives, say customs. This day is the paper if you like to read more. Vanguard newspaper this morning, front page: border closure, customs clarifies directive, dismisses extension of partial closure till January 31, 2020. Front page, Vanguard newspaper. From the front page of Daily Independent newspaper this morning: customs dismisses January 31 border closure terminal date. That's from Daily Independent newspaper. Moving on to a similar one from the Nation newspaper this morning: no date yet to reopen borders, says customs. That's from the Nation newspaper. Banner from Daily Sun: borders remain shut indefinitely. Riders presidency says few strategic objectives for closure not yet achieved. It has helped check firearms influx, DSS. Daily Sun newspaper for that one. Front page headline from Daily Trust: border closure to last beyond January 2020. Federal government speaking. Daily Trust is the paper. And from Blueprint newspaper: Buhari extends border closure to January 31. Blueprint newspaper. Rotimi, it seems we have conflicting reports on the papers this morning.
Well, because it's not clear what is happening, sadly. I think the most interesting statement there is the border closure will continue until government objectives are met. Now, because we don't know what the objectives are, in fact, the borders had been closed for some time before people realized what was happening. So the idea of doing government policy in the dark, where the policy is already underway before anybody knows what is happening, and then when people try and find out what is happening, it is not clear anymore, because the DSS says it is to stop importation of firearms or smuggling of firearms. That's in today's paper. Customs says it is to stop importation or smuggling of rice. And everybody comes up with their own version of why the borders have been closed.
Right.
So unless we know clearly what the objectives are, we won't know when those objectives have been met. So the idea that the closure will continue until the objectives are met just leaves everybody very puzzled.
Indeed. We also heard that some of the trucks that have been trapped at the ports are now being vandalized by hoodlums and thieves.
You mean at the border?
Yes, at the border.
Well, it's inevitable. You can't have expensive goods in trucks parked there for a long time, and people will not gather to say, what's in here. I mean, is it of value? There is a lot of poverty, and the security of goods is also dependent on their rapid movement, not putting them anywhere where, whether it is just people gathering out of poverty to, the same way when there's a petrol tanker accident, people gather to start scooping fuel. You know, that kind of thing is driven by poverty. But of course, there is also the criminal element wondering, can they steal a whole container?
Indeed.
Maybe.
There's also this sharp division in opinion as to what the effect of this border closure on local economy. Some experts are saying that it's good, for local economy, especially rice farmers. Some are saying it's bad for local economy, especially manufacturers who export their goods out of the country to other neighboring countries.
What the border needs is effective policing, not closure. You can't close borders indefinitely. If not, you might as well just build a wall and seal off the rest of the world and then seal yourself in. There is a point at which the closure will start to backfire, because we must not forget that even though the stated aim is to keep out rice smugglers and firearm smugglers,
Right.
Nigeria exports too to the neighbors. So if things can't go in and things can't go out, at some point, those that, because the whole point of ECOWAS, really, free movement of goods and services,
Right.
is that the ECOWAS member states should be able to take advantage of that. Now, Nigeria is the biggest economy in West Africa. So to the extent that Nigeria manages to manufacture anything, some of it will be going to the neighboring countries. And if it can't go out, then obviously it's counterproductive, because in Nigeria, look at the biggest economies in the world. They are not the biggest just because they produce for their own economies. They are the biggest because they also export a lot. So if they can't export, their economies will shrink. Look at China, USA. If they can't export, their economies will shrink. So to the extent that Nigeria has anything to export, if we can't export it, it's going to become counterproductive eventually.
Indeed. Let's move on to our next headline this morning. We'll begin again with the Guardian newspaper. PDP not decided on 2023 presidential candidates. Accuses APC of plotting crisis in party. That's on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Moving on to the next paper this morning, Daily Trust. No zoning formula for 2023 yet. The PDP trying to explain itself. From this day newspaper, PDP undecided on zoning of 2023 presidential ticket. That's from this day newspaper. Looking at the Nation newspaper this morning, PDP, we are yet to zone offices for 2023. Rider governors not divided. From the front page of the Nation newspaper. And let's look at the front page of Daily Independent newspaper. 2023, PDP dismisses reports retaining presidential slots in Northeast, Southeast. There's another similar headline on the front page of the same paper, Daily Independent. 2023, Atiku's associates want him to run again. Riders, he never said 2019 poll would be his last. Spokesman, Afenifere ACF react. Daily Independent newspaper. You're shaking your head there, Timmy.
Well, as the young folks will say, who's zoning up? The problems facing Nigeria's teeming youth, unemployment, they don't have ability to do the things their parents and grandparents almost took for granted. I mean, young people now, if you are leaving school now, the idea that you may be able to afford a car is a pipe dream. Housing is wahala, healthcare, food, to find a job. Look, it's not, and it's likely to get worse unless there are deliberate policies to drive industrialization, which relies on a whole lot of things like electricity and so forth. So these are the things that young people are interested in. Zoning.
But isn't that integral to politics, especially in Nigeria here?
No,
where you
Nigeria
have
is at the
zones?
point now where Nigeria needs the best people for the job. Look, let me just give you 2 or 3 examples. So, the people in Shongota have been weeping about roads and other things. A lot of border communities there, no lights. You don't need to be told that there was a president that this country had that is from that area.
Right.
If you go to Bayelsa, where the elections are coming up on November 16th, the problems they have there are numerous, starting with road, electricity. You don't need to be told that a certain president came from there. Katsina State is the matter of banditry there is rising at, not just in Katsina, in Zamfara, in neighboring states, but the fact that bandits have a foothold in Katsina, and that the Bureau of Statistics, the National Nutrition Report, the last one released at the end of last year, stated that hunger is highest in Katsina State,
Right.
at 58%. You don't need to be told that there is a president from there. So look, when Nigeria's major political parties especially start talking about zoning, you get the impression that the political elites are interested in using the parties as a vehicle for power grab, not for improving the lives of. The evidence is in front of us. Every successive Nigerian generation is arguably worse than the previous one. Just ask any young person. So in that sense, are the politicians really interested in improving the life of successive generations?
That's a very big question,
Yeah.
really. The very,
So,
very big question.
Zoning, we are in 2019. People are already talking of zoning in 2023. That's the elite in one party already struggling, trying to edge each other out.
Indeed. Let's move on quickly to our next headline this morning, and we'll talk about minimum wage. Vanguard newspaper: minimum wage governors that can't pay should be impeached. NLC speaking, their riders alleges they all charter private jets at least thrice weekly. Meets tomorrow in Abuja on consequential adjustment. That's from the Vanguard newspaper. Similar headline from Daily Independent newspaper: Labour to assemblies impeach governors who won't pay minimum wage. That's from Daily Independent newspaper. And from Blueprints newspaper, banner headline: minimum wage implementation impeach defiant governors. Labour tells state assemblies. Riders: Justin urges Buhari on EO for states autonomy. Nasarawa judiciary staff won on showdown. Serap wants FG to probe governors. Chairman over LG funds. Blueprint newspaper. Rotimi.
For there to even be a snowball's chance in hell of that happening, those assemblies need to be occupied by people that have the interest of the citizens at heart.
This is nearly impossible.
Look, that kind of headline, sometimes when you read headlines, you want to cast a comical version of the same headline. In this case, that headline will be cast as Labour urges assembly members, bites the hand that feeds you.
That's right. That sounds really interesting if you put it that way. Let's quickly move on because of time. We need to wrap up.
I'm not saying the minimum wage is not important, but
yes,
the Labour is talking to
but the
wrong
reality
people.
of the assemblies impeaching governors.
Labour is talking to the wrong people there. They should be
Indeed.
talking to the citizens of the states.
Indeed. Look at this one from Daily Sun. It's virtually in all of the papers this morning. Obaseki Oshomole Spa over Iyambo attacks. He came to my house uninvited. Party chair. That story is almost everywhere. The party chairman of the national chairman of the APC did say that those dogs that attacked Obaseki and Oba of Lagos, King Israel, Highness King Akiolu, those thugs were hired by the deputy governor, Mr. Shaibu.
So somebody says.
That's the party chairman who said that, Shomale.
So somebody says now.
And what is the implication of these, really? Because it looks at these people, they come together in front of the camera, and off the camera, they're like sworn enemies.
Again, those headlines should have just said power struggle in Edo, latest installment of drama ahead of next governorship election. That's what's happening there. It's a power struggle.
Well, we hope to listen and watch carefully what transpires in Edo, because, hey,
And by the way,
if care is not taken,
it may have serious consequences.
I was going to say that.
For the fortunes of the party, not just in the state but nationally.
At the national level.
If you have a scenario in which the national chair of the party is engaged in war of words on the newspaper with the incumbent governor, and their supporters are exchanging cordials and sticks on the streets of the state, that's not heading in the right direction.
Right.
And that's an internal party matter, not even with another party.
What does this say about the conflict resolution, internal conflict resolution mechanism
Well,
of the state, of the party?
Very poor. Someone I've known for many years, I mean, I've not seen him for a long time, but I've known him for many years from university, wrote a book recently. I mean, the APC has one very unusual structure, which is that they have a kind of administrative mechanism,
Right.
which is supposed to unite the governors together, and the DG of that mechanism wrote a book on internal party democracy. And what he was saying essentially in the book is that the internal party democracy in the party is not looking good, and that if it is not addressed, it may lead to serious problems. He did the media rounds. He was on TV. He was talking about the book. I think we should try and get him to public square to come and talk about it. But essentially, he was onto something. He's a very analytical guy.
Right.
I mean, from what I know of him from about 30 years ago. And essentially, even as a member of the party, what he was saying there was that unless the internal democracy is sorted, that the next elections he may end up in blows.
Indeed. Let's check out this particular banner on the front page of Daily Trust newspaper. Lecturers cut corners to get promotion. It's a very it's an exclusive report from Daily Trust newspaper, and they have these infographics in front of it that actually explains how many universities we have, how many staff in our universities, teaching and non-teaching, how many number of professors that are there, the students' population, both undergraduate, masters, and PhD, and the number of students that are students of the NOUN, that's the National Open University of Nigeria. Let me just take a sneak peek into that story. Lecturers in many universities across the country are cutting corners to become professors. This is according to findings from Daily Trust newspaper. Daily Trust reports that the situation is prevalent in many federal, state, and private universities as teachers struggle to get promotion. You can go pick up that story, but what does it say about our education system?
Well,
so
look,
the students don't only cut corners, now it's lecturers.
Well, look, there are also a lot of lecturers that deserve to be promoted, but the system has blocked them. Because they are ASU leaders. I mean, there is one of the best philosophical minds in the country. Taught generations of students at IFE.
Right.
Philosophy. And in any sane country, he would have been one of the youngest professors of philosophy in the world. And he was just blocked left, right, and center. I mean, there are many people like that. I mean, one of my friends and teachers who's arguably one of the best literary minds in the country, had to go abroad to be made a professor because the vice chancellor told him that, with the way he writes, this was during military regime,
Right.
with the way he writes in the papers and criticizes that he may not make professorship ever. And that's what happened. He had to go abroad to teach, to become a professor. So the thing cuts both ways. Universities are not separate from the rest of the society.
Right.
Having said that, there is something we need to underline in this country, which is that if every young person that has the capacity to go to university passes the entry exam, millions still will not get access because we don't have enough universities. If everybody scores 400 or meets the criteria, probably 30 or 40% of those that want to go to university will have university admission.
Right.
Those are the important things that we should be paying attention to, and that is why the universities need better funding,
Right.
not just for quality, but also in quantity. You know,
Rotimi, we have to go now. We have to go. We must go. That's the much we can take on the front pages. Rotimi Sankore, thank you for staying with us. We are back in a moment. When we return, we're talking about Operation Positive Identification of the federal government. We'll be having some guests in the studio and on the phone line to have the discussion with us. I can see your messages on our socials, WhatsApp and Facebook. Thank you for being a part of it. You can also keep watching us online on Facebook and YouTube. Not forgetting Twitter at Nigeria Info FM. If you want to be part of our discussion, our next discussion coming up in a couple of minutes away. I'm Sheriff Quadry. We'll be back in a moment.
More news and information coming up. We'll be back in a moment.